Yes, sirree. Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Happiest period of my day, being here with all of you. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And if you want to send an email, it's rushbo at eibnet.com. I checked the email during the break, as you know. Now, folks, contrary to what is thought to be the case out there, I haven't signed on to the Trump campaign. I'm not a Trump guy. Everybody's assuming that I'm a Trump supporter. And you know why they assume that? It's not from anything I've said. It's because I'm not a Trump hater. And that's the better description. I don't hate Trump. I'm not worried about Trump. I'm not alarmed about what Trump is doing. And a lot of people have said, you know, if you were consistent, you would be opposing Trump the way you opposed Perot back in 1992. And, you know, I've pondered that. I pride myself on being consistent when it comes to ideology and politics. I mean, I'm not a phony, baloney, plastic, banana, good time, rock and roll, and I don't change what I believe with the wind. And I don't tell people I believe things I don't believe, and vice versa. I can honestly tell you that the Trump candidacy has in no way looked to me similar to the Perot candidacy. I'll tell you why. My instincts back in 1992, when the Perot phenomenon began, told me, and they were eventually borne out, that Perot was not in this race or in that race to win it, that there was something else going on. And even when he launched his campaign, and even when he was out showing up in debates and campaigns, there was something that told me he still wasn't serious about winning. But instead, I really did have the impression that he was attempting to, sabotage. I thought there was a vendetta. I thought he had something going on with George H.W. Bush. It turned out that there was something there, and it involved the Reagan administration and supposedly missing and then discovered prisoners of war in Vietnam. But the Trump candidacy, I've never thought that Trump wasn't serious once he got into it. Now, I'm one of the people that didn't think he would actually pull the trigger and run. But when people tell me now, can he win or is he serious, I always say I think he's serious. He may drop out at some point. But to me, the two things are just different. And a lot of people say, you oppose Perot, and you get the same reasons for opposing Trump, but you're not opposing Trump. By the way, things are a lot different today than they were then, too. Vastly different. But anyway, that's the best answer I can give you, is that, and I even predicted back then that that Perot would not finish the race. I predicted that he would get out if it began to look like he was going to win. And he did, if you recall. And then he came back in later, a second time. Remember when he got out, he said that it was because he had discovered that people were planning on hijacking or sabotaging his daughter's wedding. I forget the specific details. Anyway, that's just to answer these numerous email inquiries. But the point is here, people do fall in certain camps, and I think there are Trump haters out there, particularly on the Republican side. I'm not one of those. And because I'm not a Trump hater, some are assuming, well, then I must be a Trump guy. I'm a nobody guy right now. And I've explained why I have this policy or philosophy during primaries. I'll explain it one more time, especially at a primary policy or campaign this long. Folks, I do not have anything to say about any of these campaigns. I don't know where these guys are going to go, and Carly Fiorina. I don't know what they're going to say from day to day. I have no idea how they're going to change, if they're not going to change. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I just do not feel confident hitching my wagon this far out. Now, many people say, but you could make the difference if you would. Maybe. I don't believe that. I think there are too many forces at work out there for any one individual to determine the outcome of something like this. It's more that I want to be here next year and the year after that and whatever year's not continuing that I want to do this. I want to be here, and I don't want my credibility compromised in the process. And my attitude has always been that politicians come and go. They win and lose. It's the name of their game. It's the nature of their game. And so I just sit back and observe. I think the primary process is ideal for winnowing out those who can do it and those who can't. And this primary process is proving most fascinating in ways nobody would have predicted. And I think there's even a bigger surprise than Trump right now, and that's Ben Carson. In terms of the establishment and pretty much anybody else, if you would have said, you would have told people that Ben Carson would be a factor 6 months ago, I don't think anybody would have taken you seriously. And if you would have then further said that Ben Carson's going to be very close to the lead and that the establishment chosen candidates are going to be so low that you need a microscope to see them, that would have been tough to believe too. So I sit back and observe these things and comment on them as they go, which is exactly what I've been doing here. And because I have not expressed disgust for or anger at or fear of Trump, people are assuming that I'm a Trump guy. But let's move from that on to this talk about his plan, which I have here. I haven't had a chance. It came in after the program started, and I have not had a chance to delve into it. But a lot of people are getting on his case for sounding a lot like Democrats. I've had some email from people. Oh, my God, I just saw the Trump tax plan. Rush, it looks just like Obama's. It looks like just like Clinton's, like it's a tax the rich tax plan. And I don't think that's the case. Now, again, it's limited how much detail I've been able to absorb here, but what I've been able to see of it so far, I don't think he's talking about the rich as the left talks about the rich. When the left talk about the rich, they mean anybody. Well, in 1996, the rich was anybody of $50,000 or above. Today, it's not much more than that. And that's not who Trump's talking about. Trump is talking about the 1% of the 1%. He's talking about some of these really highfalutin, he calls them the hedge fund guys, who are effectively paying nothing. Now, I went back, I mentioned to you that you can find, in the 1980s, you can find evidence of Ronald Reagan with similar tax proposals to what I have seen of the Trumpsters. If you go back to May of 1985, after the first Reagan tax cuts, he proposed even more tax reform. He made a speech. And in the speech announcing his new proposals, which included slashing taxes for families, as Trump has done today. In that same speech, Reagan said the following: under our new tax proposal, the oil and gas industry will be asked to pick up a larger share of the national tax burden. The old oil depletion allowance will be dropped from the tax code except for wells producing less than 10 barrels a day. By eliminating this special preference, we'll go a long way toward ensuring that those that earn their wealth in the oil industry will be subject to the same taxes as the rest of us. It's only fair. Continue our drive for energy independence. The current treatment of the costs of exploring and drilling for new oil will be maintained. We are determined to cut back on special preferences that have too long favored some industries at the expense of others. We would repeal the investment tax credit. We would reform the depreciation system. Incentives for research and experimentation, however, would be preserved. There is one group of losers in our tax plan, Reagan said in May of 1985. The one group of losers in our tax plan are those individuals and corporations who are not paying their fair share, or for that matter, any share. These abuses cannot be tolerated. From now on, they shall pay a minimum tax. The free rides are over. Now, Some of this may come as a surprise to some of you because the impression of Reagan and taxes is that it was slash, 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 cut, cut, cut. And, of course, by the time the left gets through with what Reagan did, the rich weren't paying anything. I don't know how many of you, because that has been part of the left's history revisionism since the 1980s. I don't know how many of you think that Reagan got rid of taxes on the rich. But it's just the exact opposite, folks. The rich ended up paying more after Reagan's tax reform. And the way it was made to happen was not by raising their rates, it was by lowering their rates and getting rid of all these silly brackets where income could be sheltered for crazy wacko investments. Deductions, they were called. Reagan got rid of the top marginal rate was 90% when he took office. Maybe it was 70% when he took office. 70 or 90. We did have a 90% tax rate at some point. Maybe 70 when he took office. And when he left office, it was down 28%. So what happened is that it became much easier and attractive for the wealthy to declare their income and only pay 28 cents of every dollar rather than go through a much complicated procedure to try to avoid a 90% bracket that was paid on, of course, the last dollars people earned. How else do you explain after Reagan's tax cuts? You figure this has always been the story I've tried to use to explain tax cuts generating revenue. 1981, Reagan takes office. Top marginal rate, 70%. The amount of revenue collected via the tax code is about $500 billion. 8 years later, Reagan leaves. The top rate's down to 28% from 70, and the amount of money collected from the tax codes almost doubled to $900-some-odd billion by reducing the rates. When they tell Democrats about this, the Democrats, well, that doesn't matter to me. That's why it's not fair that the rich only pay 28%. It's not fair. We need a higher rate on them. It's not about the revenue to them. It's about punishment. So when I look at Trump's tax proposal here, and again, it's a cursory glance, it doesn't look like a left-wing tax plan to me. It looks like and sounds like, in fact, like maybe some people that helped Reagan put his together are working for Trump. It's that close. You know, oil and gas has been replaced by the carried interest hedge fund guys. But clearly there are people today, as there were then, who weren't paying any tax, and Reagan made sure that that was ended. Contrary to what people have been told, that Reagan cut taxes for the rich, it's just the exact opposite. He might have cut rates or implemented low rates on income that was not taxed at all, but the rich ended up paying more, and they still are, by the way. You've seen the numbers on the 50% of all taxes are paid by the top 2% of wage earners. It's really kind of out of balance now. But my point is that no one, despite all of this, no one cut taxes of every kind more than Ronald Reagan did. Individual tax rates, corporate tax rates, nobody cut taxes more or better than Reagan did. Yet in order to flatten tax rates and increase deductions of certain kinds, which was intended to spur growth and assist families, he insisted on closing some loopholes in exchange for lowering the rates. Well, I'm sorry, it seems like exactly what Trump is doing. And again, I hedge this on the basis that I just have a cursory glance at this. But Trump's talking about 4 rates, and one of them is 0. So actually there's 3 black brackets, 10, 20, and 30. Or 5, 10, and 20, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's 20. 25 is the top marginal rate now is 39.6. So he's going to cut taxes for everybody. You know, I still think this is too complicated. You know, I'm for a fair tax or flat tax. You know, 15, 18% and be done with it. I know that's never going to happen. I know that the tax code writers are never going to give up their power. We'd have to elect a whole brand new Congress. But nevertheless, that's what I favor. But let's not sit here and pretend that Trump's tax plan is Bernie Sanders. This is something that people that don't like Trump are going to drag out now to try to scare his supporters, to make it look like Trump's tax plan is Obama's or it's Bernie Sanders or it's the Clintons or what have you. And I just don't think that's the case, folks.